welcome everyone to panel number 10. Our discussion today is going to be on what the future holds for sourcing, trading, and manufacturing in China and beyond. Okay, so before I start and ask my questions, I want to ask you guys, who of you work in or work with clients who are doing sourcing, trading, or manufacturing? Can you put your hands up? Not, yeah, good. I mean, I think, most of us who do professional services, these are our main clients here, as it's a huge hub, yeah, in Hong Kong. Okay, so this panel was organized by the newly formed Sourcing, Trading, and Manufacturing Committee here in Hong Kong at the Can Cham. And we have 3 well-known Canadian business owners from this sector that are going to share with us their pearls of wisdom and their hard-won, battlefield stories, okay? So this is going to be a sharing session and just a conversation between 3 guys. So you guys all know already who's up here, so I'm not going to, retell you. I'm going to tell you one really important thing about each one of them, though, okay? So Jack is a UBC grad. Yay! And Kendall is a UBC grad. Yes, and Sheldon is a U of T grad. So I'm an SFU grad, so we have 3 West Coasters, and we had to have a little diversity, so we brought in Sheldon. So thank you, Sheldon, for joining us. We really appreciate that. Okay, so before we get started, I'm not asking these guys to tell you what they do. I'm asking them to tell you why they do it. Okay, what's their why? So Jack, what's your why?
I think one sentence really sums it up is we light up the world.
I love it. Okay.
What we do is we want to bring interactivity and gamification to the learning journey of kids. That's why we're doing this.
Excellent.
I was solving my sister's problem. She's trying to do cross-border shopping. It was difficult. We're trying to make it easier for her.
That's a good why, right? Sisters, super important. Okay, so we're going to start with our questions. And this one is hopefully to answer some questions that our listeners in Canada might have, okay? So what questions, you guys, so they're just going to have a conversation. So this is not a panel discussion. This is a conversation. So what questions should any business in Canada be asking themselves that wants to distribute, set up, or sell in Asia? So I'm going to start with Kendall.
I think, for someone from Canada, if you have a heart to try to explore the market here in the region or Hong Kong, I think the first question you need to ask yourself is the why. Is that the market that you think your product will have a potential product market fit, or you want to try to test out in a region, and whether you would think manufacturing in this area will have an advantage over doing so in Canada. That pretty much sums up what I think you should be asking if you are considering coming to this region.
Yeah, but I think besides the why, I think is you also have to really think about how you're going to do it, right? As a Canadian or friends who are in Canada trying to start a business, going into, say, even Hong Kong or China feels like a daunting task, right? I think the first thing you should really be asking yourself is, do you have the right connections or contacts, right? As maybe a startup, maybe the quick answer to that is no, you don't have it. So I think you need to leverage whatever network that you have, because we're all Canadians or from Canada or some Canadian connection. There's a lot of people who work in Hong Kong or work in China who have a Canadian connection and are willing to help in all different types of industries, right? So no matter whether you're selling, distributing, or sourcing, you need to find the right people to ask the right questions, right? Because if you don't have some of those answers, then you shouldn't just dive your head deep and start sourcing from China or Asia.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to be here. So the question is, are you committed to it? You have to spend a lot of time here. But once you hit the ground here, there's a lot of networking, events that solves your problem. So I think being here is very important.
I think CanCham event here is one of the very good occasions for networking, right?
You know, are there some markets that are more interesting to enter than others here in Asia? And like, are there some special considerations to think about China versus, you know, any of the ASEAN countries that you would, you know, that you'd want to talk about for these guys?
No, I think speaking personally though, like since I'm in the lighting industry, and for those who don't know, I think the majority of all lighting products is produced in China. It's just a matter of fact, right? So if your business is lighting related like mine, you have to go to China. And I think with that, you also have to identify within your industry that you want to get into, where is it that the hub is, right? It doesn't have to be China, or even within China, you have to figure out, is it Guangdong area? Is it Zhejiang area? Where is the sort of the Mecca or the hub of manufacturing, right? And then to go there and take a look for yourself, right? I know a lot of customers or friends who source, but have never ever even visited the factory that makes their products, right? So that's just quite interesting, right? You think, oh, I'm just buying and selling all this stuff, and I don't even know how it's made or who makes it, right? And how they make it. So this is something that they really should consider.
And what about selling into, you know, like those Canadians that are selling into Asia?
I guess I'll start with this one. I mentioned that we make gamified products to help kids learn. One of the biggest products that we have is to help kids learn the Chinese language, which is a very challenging subject to learn, needless to say. And for us, it's a no-brainer to choose Hong Kong because, you know, Hong Kong kids have the toughest life in this department. You know, think about it. You go like in mainland China, you know, Singapore, you know, they speak Mandarin. What they speak is what they write. In Hong Kong here, we speak Cantonese, but when we write it, we actually can't write what we speak. We have to write it in a different way and in traditional Chinese characters. Plus the fact that now kids are required to learn also Mandarin and simplified Chinese. So, you know, this is the biggest headache right now for parents, and, you know, choosing the market and sell our products here in Hong Kong really addresses the pain points. And we do have plans to extend our product lines to nearby regions like ASEAN or you know, mainland China. So being in Hong Kong here, really it's the best fit for us in terms of both market and also manufacturing proximity to Shenzhen and Dongguan.
For selling into, I think Asia, Southeast Asia especially, is very interesting. We have entered 12 consumer markets here in Asia. We've done Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and all that. What we've learned is that do we have the right local partner to work with? It makes everything much easier, right? And at the same time, I've shared with you guys, you know, I've started, I mean, many JVs, and at least 5 or 6 times we got screwed, you know. And so it's a way to go, but at the same time, it's very risky as well. So finding the right partner through our investor is much easier.
Okay, so before I move on to the next question, if we were to tell a story, so Sheldon just shared a very personal story. If we were to tell a story of either like your business or someone's that you've seen, right, that has tried to distribute or sell into Asia, and a lesson learned from that experience, what would it be?
So I'll first describe a little bit of what, you know, one of the things that we need to manufacture is a new type of smart cards that when you put on touch screens, it interacts with an iPad directly on the screen. And that's like a technology that we have patented. So when we first started out looking for a manufacturing partner, with zero experience in manufacturing. So we were very naive in, okay, well, Shenzhen and Dongguan is nearby. And so let's just go up there and knock on doors and see which manufacturing partner we can team up with and explore how to make this technology and product in mass quantity. So we learned a lot of lessons here. I mean, for example, we got cheated a little bit of money. Quality control is a big issue. I love to tell people this, but at one point, on one occasion, I had to sleep in the factory to monitor those workers to make sure they were manufacturing all the stuff to specs and making sure that they deliver first thing in the morning. And I took the first high-speed train back to Hong Kong, carrying the product samples to deliver to client. So then we really learned it a hard way that there's something much easier closer by, which is eventually when we found a partner here in Hong Kong, a long time history, local manufacturer with factories in Shenzhen area. Now, working with the right partner, as Sheldon just mentioned, is super important. Now, Hong Kong has a long history of manufacturing, starting in the 80s, even 70s. A lot of these factories in the 90s, they moved over to expand and move their manufacturing facilities into Shenzhen, Dongguan, etc. But they carry a ton of experience, and Hong Kong people are known for delivering quality, being responsible, and all that. So now we found this partner. All we need to do is give them all the specs. They're very patient in working with us to turn our ideas into prototypes, and they on our behalf. They monitor the factories, Q&A process, and logistics. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, in the beginning, we were thinking, okay, well, if we go straight to factories in China ourselves, maybe we can cut costs a little bit. But turns out we actually pay more in terms of lessons learned. So I think that's one of the key stories I would like to tell people.
No, I think my story is slightly related, but standing from the opposite side, we were the partner that one of the startup customers came to ask for help to get into the market, or from a manufacturing standpoint. They were selling in North America. They were based in North America and wanted to find a factory, but didn't know where to go, right? So through networking or friends of friends, we met and we helped them out, right? So basically what we ended up doing is I told them, don't worry about anything about manufacturing. Tell me what you want made, and we'll take care of the rest, and they can concentrate on building the market and doing the selling, and leave the QC, leave the heavy duty factory work to us. As either we have our own factory or our vendors that we work with, right? I think that really helped him at least at the beginning, right? So that he can trust that, and then later on, of course, he started doing his own direct sourcing once his company grew to a certain size. And, we were okay with that, because as a business person, that is the way to go if you want to grow later on in the development of a company.
Okay, so these guys want to talk about manufacturing and sourcing in China, right? So what are the trends that you're seeing in manufacturing, sourcing, and trading from your perspectives, and logistics that support it? Jack, what are the trends?
So because we do operate our own manufacturing, I think what we're seeing right now is very realistic. The cost of labor in China is much, much higher than it was 10 years ago. I'm not talking percentage points. I'm talking, probably triple or multiple 100% of increase of cost, pure cost, not just the salaries that they get paid or what they expect to get paid, is all the fringe benefits that now a typical laborer or manufacturing worker expects and demands, and all the welfare and all the other things. So it quickly adds up. And also, all the regulations of manufacturing now that the Chinese government is imposing, as the country develops, its demands and it's more strict in terms of environmental or safety. All those things add up, and what that entails in terms of a trend is towards automated manufacturing, or what we call is we require now not just a laborer, but a skilled labor, right? A skilled laborer can operate a fully automatic or semi-automatic assembly line. Less people, but they're now operating very sensitive and highly technologically advanced equipment. So it's not just, a couple thousand people tinkering away and trying to build things by hand, right? So we see that as a huge trend, and it will change how China operates as the main manufacturing hub for the world.
Yeah. How about you guys? Do you see the trends that you see from your perspectives?
Actually, there's something interesting, which is like more D2C is happening, Shein.com, Peppat.com, going from manufacturers, leveraging the supply chain that China has and go directly to consumer, which is growing really fast. And we can see, Pinduoduo is also going to the States and getting really good tractions, right? So there's something that is happening, in terms of that.
I think from a startup perspective, if you have a new product, a new technology that you want to look for, someone to try out the production with you. I think as Jack mentioned, China is slowly moving up the value chain in terms of what products they manufacturing, whereas a lot of commoditized products may be moving over a lot more to Cambodia, Vietnam, etc. So maybe it's about my perspective is, if you have a startup, new kind of product idea, so China could be a good fit for you because you might not be ready for large quantity manufacturing in Vietnam, Cambodia yet. And for us, when we first started, just trying out the product idea, right? As a startup, fast iteration is key. So I remember back then, every time we had a new design or slight changes in design, all we had to do is just ship the design, send it over to our partner in Hong Kong, who then send over to Chinese factories. And then in 2 days, we have the parts back and we can carry out testing. Now, I can't say that can be done if your factory is somewhere overseas in Vietnam. The shipping would definitely cost more than a week to arrive. So fast iteration would be a good reason for you to think about this region here.
So what about China plus one? Is a plus one a real thing? What are the pros and cons? So Stephen Phillips asked me about it yesterday, and I deflected the question so you guys could answer it. So what? Yeah, tell us about that.
I think we have to really look at it. Depending on the business, I think is the tariff situation is a very real and long-lasting situation. I think maybe a couple of years ago we may have thought, oh, maybe it'll get canceled later on, but it looks like it's here to stay, at least for the next little while. So as a business owner or as an entrepreneur, right, you do have to take that into account and really look at how to work with your partners and vendors to expand into other regions, right? To explore that China plus one model, right? Even for ourselves, we do look at it, especially for our US market. And we do evaluate our vendors and partners to say, okay, do you have the potential and capacity to set up shop somewhere outside of China? And we will take that into consideration when we work with them.
I would say, China logistics is just way better than everywhere else, with the volume. So even with that, I think it's hard to replace.
Okay, so so I want to hear some stories about China plus one, right? We've all heard them. So our clients have tried it as well, and there's some lessons learned. So so do you have any stories that either you've gone through yourself or that you've heard from those around you that might help those who are thinking about their manufacturing destination and evaluating them?
For us, we're not quite at a scale where we have a huge amount of quantity produced for our products yet. So I think for now, we'll probably stick around with the region. But truth be told, I just came back from Singapore last week, and just to feel out the whole China plus one discussion. And the way we stand with our positioning at our current state of the company is we'll use Hong Kong as the base sort of manufacturing slash market hub, but then we extend our product outreach to nearby regions like ASEAN. And when that happens, then Singapore could be a potential sales extension. But for us, Hong Kong has all what we need here at the moment, manufacturing and core market wise. So that will be our strategy as a center.
I think for us, or a story that I can share is something that probably already exists quite a bit, but I think something that we further expand on is what we call local for local. And what I mean by that is all the components or key technologies actually built in China, but assembled in the local market, right? Be it in Southeast Asia, be it in North America, be it in Europe, everything is, the final assembly is done locally, right? For tax, for cost, for tariff reasons, for logistic reasons, there's advantages to doing local for local. Maybe the main disadvantage is the how to delineate where the warranty resides, right? Because for our products or any type of hardware, the finished product, if it goes wrong, you blame the factory. Well, if the factory only did the assembly, do they take the full blame, or do the component vendors do that, right? So this is, in the past, with everything is made in China, is not a concern because the main factory bears all the risk. But when we do a local for local or a local assembly, this is something you have to be careful about in any industry that you're in.
And so the sanctions have pushed a local to local theme?
Yes, the sanctions have pushed or persuaded or influenced to make some of those decisions, where in the past we would have thought it was not worth the risk, right?
So, I mean, I guess that brings us to the geopolitical and COVID situation. We don't want to talk about the geopolitical situation per se, but how it's affected business decisions, right? Because there's some real impact on the business decisions that people have made in the past year and have made for their short-term and longer-term business plan. So for you guys, how has that affected those business decisions? Sheldon?
For us, since we're a tech company, we raised money from investors. I still remember, my investor got into my car. The first thing he said was like, "Sheldon, please don't make money. I mean, not be profitable. Focus on the growth," right? So the priority was growth versus net profit or bottom line, right? And for the past 5 years, that's the plan of the company. But when that happened, we're not sure about how the world's going to change, how the capital market is going to react. So we decided to turn profitable, right? Which is a great exercise. Before, we don't really focus on efficiency. We focus on growth, right? Maybe it's more expensive to hire this person, but let's do it, right? And then last year, we started looking into every dollar that we spend. For example, we took 3 weeks off without spending any marketing dollar. And then we realized half of the people still come in, right? It means that we didn't do it really well. And it's a good exercise for us to, be ready for the future.
For us, before COVID, we were actually doing a B2B model where we export that technology to other companies to make end products. Work with companies like Sega in Japan, Nintendo, Disneyland. COVID changed all of that. Obviously, lockdown, logistics problem really stopped a lot of B2B sort of transactions. So we decided to pivot into a B2C model where we completely just sell directly to consumers here in Hong Kong. And I mentioned that we manufacture our products here in around the region, like Shenzhen area. And in a sense, yes, Hong Kong's border was closed with China, but there were still limited shipping by land available into Hong Kong. Whereas if we manufactured that overseas, then that would have completely stopped. So that was kind of lucky for us. And also our product also requires the use of like a tablet or iPad to operate. COVID actually accelerated adoption of new technologies in education. And so that kind of helped us, to accelerate this piece of business altogether in the past 2 years. So, we all know COVID is, it's behind us, and, we're not happy that it actually had happened. But in a sense, I think it helped us at least, to reconsider our business model and find new ways to thrive in the new norm. That's what we did.
Did the geopolitical situation change your decisions at all, or it didn't factor in?
Yeah, well, manufacturing-wise, not really, but market selection-wise, I mean, truth be told, there were a lot of policy shift in the last 2 years, especially in education sector in mainland China. So we're cautiously eyeing the situation and also, considering where we want to expand next. So we're still hopeful that we can slowly explore the 1.4 billion population market with the Chinese education angle. But also we're also putting a little bit more weight to consider nearby region like ASEAN, where there's a huge population with the need to learn Chinese as well.
Yeah, I think in my situation is the geopolitical situation, right, actually pushed us to diversify outside of predominantly China, Hong Kong market, where we were more focused before. It kind of pushed us to evaluate how to expand globally, because that way we think will mitigate any geopolitical situation in the future, because you don't know where the next crisis is going to be, right? It could be in Europe, could be in US, could be in Southeast Asia, but if we're in all of those markets, then the impact may be less, at least because we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. And how we've done that is actually COVID actually helped, because we diversified through acquisition. And during COVID, it was a buyer's market, right? Lots of people were not doing well. Lots of people wanted to sell quickly, and we capitalized, and we were fortunate enough to acquire some good businesses at attractive prices because of the situation globally, right? So I think it helped us, but now, of course, now that COVID is over, now the pressure is on us to perform and to grow those businesses. But overall, yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, I think that leads, Sheldon has something to say, I know, but just before I let you jump in, I want to ask Jack this follow-on question, because, the Innovation Committee panel talks about financing before, right? But Jack's company is in a position where they're actually, like he said, doing some acquisitions or some investments in the industry. So I just want to ask, like you said, you just made an acquisition, like how are you evaluating that acquisition, and what were some of the challenges by doing that acquisition during COVID and lessons learned from that?
Actually, we did the entire M&A on Teams and Zoom. I did not meet the seller until the very, very end. So it was quite funny that, well, fortunately there was Teams and Zoom, and we can have video conference pretty much every other day with the lawyers, with the accountants, doing all the DD work virtually. So in effect, it actually helped us save a bit of cost as well, because I didn't have to pay my consultants and lawyers to travel to all these places to get data. But on the flip side, as investors, right, I think the audience here or people joining virtually could be wanting to raise capital, or maybe looking to have funds, looking for startups. And for us, we're more of a private type of investor, where we always look at opportunities that are referred to us. But when we do see an opportunity, we always look at the people. Ideas, we see a lot of good ideas, good business ideas all the time, but it's about who is running it, who is the vision behind it, and getting to know that person, right? Because they may not be good business people, because they might be just starting out, but they have to realize and have that acumen and personality that we can trust will take the business to the next level, right? And so that's one key thing. The other key thing is, of course, acknowledging what you need, because of course everyone needs funds, but what are you going to use it for, and how how you're going to manage that money, right? If they don't have a very clear plan on that and data behind to show a very clear business model, right? No great idea will be successful in our view.
Yeah. So now, Sheldon, maybe you can jump back in. I want to talk to you guys about raising because Jack is more of an investor and these guys have raised capital. But before I let you talk about that, I wanted to just ask you about how the geopolitical or COVID situation changed your business decisions going forward in terms of your business.
It's just more on profitability, focusing on efficiency instead of growth.
Okay. And so let's then talk about the fundraising environment because like Jack said, everybody's looking for funds, right? Every company, well, not every company, but many companies are. And these guys have some interesting stories to tell about their fundraising experience. So Sheldon, why don't you talk to us about that and a little bit about fundraising in the different locations that you've been fundraising in?
I think Hong Kong has a great infrastructure, well, Cyberport, Sands Park, for starting off a company, right? Angel, seed is very easy in Hong Kong. But compared to other markets, there's a gap between, A to pre-IPO, right? So I've at least spoken to 300 investors in the region, right? We eventually raised the money from a Japanese fund, right? And but something interesting is happening in Hong Kong is that the Hong Kong Growth Portfolio Fund, which is focusing on ticket size from 5 to 20 million, right? And I'm very excited to see that moving forward. And in terms of Cyberport or incubation, Sands Park, we got rejected 3 times, right? And then we eventually got into it, and now I have 3 companies inside Cyberport.
Yeah.
Never give up and keep moving on it, right? Learning from the experience.
So that's a good point, right? I mean, there's a lot of there, and the previous panel talked about it a little bit, right? There's a lot of support in Hong Kong, but Kendall, what was your experience?
Our company has raised angel and some seed round. I kind of echo Sheldon's assessment of the funding situation in Hong Kong, but I want to add that I think in the previous session, I think was it Ivan? He sort of mentioned that traditionally Hong Kong has been very theme-based in terms of investing, like fintech or biotech. If you're not one of these, then maybe next. So I think the environment has slightly changing with the last 2 policy addresses with a lot more emphasis on innovation and startup ecosystem breeding. And I do see there's a lot of tangible policies and establishments being put in place for that direction. I'm from Science Park, and Science Park has been a great ideation funding platform. I'm not advertising for them, but I did experience personally
Francis is in
that
the room.
that from a startup perspective, you're a Canadian startup or someone wanting to explore the market in this region, there are funding platforms here from the government like Cyberport Science Park that lets you test out your product market fit, so to speak, in the region with lower cost because you can get free office, you can get some startup funding from them. Give it a shot and see if you find product market fit in the region, and then go from there and raise money from either Hong Kong investors or nearby investors. So I think as a jump start, it will be a good strategy for startups in general.
So I just have a follow-up question because Jack's here and you guys have a slightly different view, is like, what are the considerations in terms of raising from a private investor versus a VC or PE?
I think it's different expectation. For example, with VCs, they are not expecting profits in short term. They're more focusing on the value of your shares, right? And then they also really need you to have an exit, whether it's a trade sale, it's a SPAC or IPO, right? Versus when I talk to private investor, the first question will be like, hey, how much am I gonna get next year, right? What's the dividend like? Right? So that is a very different kind of pitch or business, right?
And imagine that, you know, people from Canada are coming here to raise money. What would your advice be to them in terms of them being successful?
There are actually a lot of like financial advisors, FA, you know, they're like, they'll go out, they have good investor network, and then they'll go actually help you on the data room first from the deck, you know, and then, you know, opening doors, because cold call doesn't work with in this game. You really need a good referral. And this FA is one of, you know, the option that we can go for.
Anything to add from the private side, Jack?
I think very, you know, Sheldon's probably put it very, very clear. As a private investor, we're very concerned about profitability. And not that we don't want our investments to go public later on, but it's probably not the top of my mind when I look at an investment. Because if you really think about it, how many startups actually go IPO? Like, for real, right? Everybody wants to, right? But not everybody has to, and still be able to run a successful business in their own right, right? From our own experience, we have both private and public businesses that we operate. It's more convenient to me personally to run a private business versus a listed company for multitudes of reasons. And if the goal is to make money, you know, IPO is not the only way. Let's just say, yeah.
So I guess case in point that if, you know, startup approaches, you know, family office or you, and if they can paint you a picture that, you know, a potential acquirer down the road 3 years on would be so and so, that would probably increase the probability of you investing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We sometimes we invest as a minority stake, more so as more of a return on investment type. If those businesses actually jive or synergize with our actual existing business, definitely we have additional points given because we think they can help us in the future, right? Be it through acquisition or merger or other ways to cooperate, because we can influence them as an investor, right? That will actually help my main business as well.
Yeah, and one of the consideration is also how this investor can help you. For example, we started our Philippines market with a JV with a local company, and you know they own the banks, they own you know airline, they own Philip Morris kind of you know business, and then it's because we can you know started this kind of partnership because of our investor. You know, some of the investors are more hands-on to support you, right? They open a lot of doors. Some are just financial, right? They don't even talk to you, you know, maybe once a year to get updates. So there are really two kind of investor that you need to look out.
Okay, well, so we're sort of coming to the end of our time. So maybe you guys can wrap it up by telling everybody, whether they're in Canada or here, about what are your hints and tips and best advice for them to be successful in either manufacturing, sourcing, or trading out here, or distributing and selling, whichever way you want to give your advice.
Right, I can start. I think if we want to sum up our entire 40 minutes of conversation, right, the way I would like to give you a send-off or for the audience is take calculated risks, right? I think why I say that is if you don't take the risk, you will not succeed, and if you don't try, you won't know. But do it in a calculated way, either be it through contacts or analysis or whatever information you can gather to help you to make those decisions. And with that, know that you may fail, and because a lot of business decisions and business ideas do fail, and acknowledge the fact that it can fail. I think that will help to set the expectations when you start a new business.
From a startup perspective, we made a mistake of wanting to do everything by ourselves. In the very beginning, we, like I said before, went to look for factories knock on their doors and, hey, can you manufacture this for us? Whereas actually, in fact, there's a lot of network here in Hong Kong that you can leverage And with a little bit of extra cost, you can actually do a lot more in a lot better ways than you spend all the time, precious time as a startup, just all by yourself. And Hong Kong has a great collection of professions from all over the place. You just have to get out here and network as much as you can, join CanCham. Yeah, that's really the way to go in this part of of the world. I mean, Asia is traditionally known as more of a relationship kind of based economy, whereas Hong Kong has a little bit better balance of both relationship and also establishment of systems here. So from a Canadian perspective, I think it's good balance.
I think networking is especially useful in Asia compared to Canada. Knowing the right people turns everything around, right? So definitely come in here, meet more people, but at the same time, don't avoid tough conversation. If it doesn't work today, it's not going to work 2 years later. So it's rather better to get things straight at the beginning, set out the expectation, and align the interest in long term. Right?
Thank you. And I mean, you kind of said it, Kendall, but what I got from what you guys said was finding the right partner out here is of utmost importance, whether that be on the manufacturing side or when you go in country to try to start your business, right? So so that was my key takeaway from what they said. So how about you guys? Do you have any questions before we wrap it up? Elizabeth?
Very much. But I was thinking, as you were speaking about one of the worst situations that I had with people coming in from Canada, very experienced business people who came in and we set up their corporate structure and whatever. And before we knew it, they had found somebody in Hong Kong and put them on the bank account. And then I got a call one morning saying, it's very strange, but I can't find this person. And he's not answering his phone, et cetera. And I said, have you checked your bank account? And there was a big gasp. And, the wonderful thing about Canadians is we're very friendly, very trusting. But when you go abroad and when you come to Asia, I'm not sure you can be that trusting. You've got to know who you're doing business with. And I find that these people that come on a 5-day trip and want to get everything done, and they have this horrendous long list of to-dos, and then they go home and they disappear, and they think people here are not going to be tempted by money in a bank account. And I think that's the worst thing that I've seen over the years in terms of that.
Wow, that is an amazing lesson to share. Have you? I haven't seen that, but have you guys ever heard stories like that?
Not personally, but I think financial management and risk mitigation, I think is any business owner should know this and not trust anyone anywhere.
Very good point. Cynical, but a good point. Any other questions before we wrap it up? No. What? Okay, then I'm going to thank my panelists, Jack, Kendall, Sheldon. Thank you so much. So these are 3 business owners that shared their stories with you guys. So I hope you got something out of it. So thank you very much, all of you.